believe in the ripple effect.
What's up? Of course, I'm your host, Ricardo Brandes, also known as Ricky Brandes, and a great episode for you today. Today we have Teace, Snyder. He's a regular on the Ripple Effect podcast. He's a regular on the Union of the Unwanted, which is a roundtable discussion show I host with Sam Tripoli, Charlie Robinson, and Midnight Mike from the OBDM show. Teace is an artist, podcaster, researcher, thinker, philosopher, and all around just one of the most interesting returning guests to the Ripple Effect podcast. But before we get into this interesting conversation, let me remind you this is a value for value show. If you get any value out of the discussions I bring to you, please consider giving some value back. Like many of you, I live a very busy life, and I have a lot of different hats I wear and a lot of priorities that can get in the way of me producing, recording, and releasing these shows as often as I would like. But if everybody who gets some value out of the Ripple Effect podcast, people who enjoy the show, people who appreciate the work that I put into, always trying to bring you the most interesting conversations, the most open-minded discussions, and the willingness to talk to anyone and everyone, all in the hope of getting a little closer to understanding ourselves and the world around us, then please consider giving some value back. It doesn't have to be financial, of course. If you can just rate the show, review the show, post the show on any of the social media platforms you're on. If you have a YouTube channel, Rumble channel, whatever channel you might have, post the show, get the word out there. But if you can't support the show, go in the show description or my website, rippleeffectpodcast.com. And there you can find all the ways of donating to the show. If you want to send a one-time donation, we have Venmo, we have PayPal, we have a crypto wallet. If you want to send a donation monthly, which is one of the best ways of helping support the show, you can send as little as $1 a month on Patreon. We have a merch store with tons of cool merch, hoodies, t-shirts, all high quality stuff. You get it quick. It's all really reasonably priced, and the quality of the material and the print is just amazing. So get a t-shirt that hopefully can also be a conversation starter at a party or at the gym. And that's it. Like I said, you can find all these links in the show description or on my website, rippleeffectpodcast.com. Enjoy the podcast, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Peace.
I know that's nice. I like that. By the way, that's an interesting science fiction poster of the Union of the Unwanted you have behind you. Well done. That's super cool.
Yeah. So what the story behind that was there's this listener of the show, and I met him. His name's Alex. I met him at the Opera House, Broadbrook Opera House in Connecticut when Eddie was here with Sam last year. I believe it was last year, last time they were in town in Connecticut. And then he was down there, and it was roughly around that time that he hit me up and said that he painted, he's an artist. He painted a picture of the crew. And so we talked about it. Then when they scheduled a new show at Broadbrook Opera House in Connecticut, he's like, hey, I'll bring it with me, and I want to give it to you guys. So there's a picture of him on stage, because what Sam and Eddie do is they do stand-up. It's like two shows. At least that's what they've been doing when they come locally. They do two shows. One is stand-up, so Sam will do stand-up, Eddie will do stand-up, and typically XG or another comedian will do stand-up. And then the second show is, I think they call it Swarm Tank, which is kind of like that, what the hell is that Trump show that was popular? I'm having a brain fart on what it was called. The one that you try to pitch some investors a new idea and try to get them to invest on.
You were talking, the thing you were vaguely alluding to was Shark Tank. The Trump one was
Well, yeah. So I think wasn't Trump on Shark Tank, or he's made a
Maybe he's made an appearance on it. I don't know. I never watched the show.
no. Okay,
Uh,
I confused that one with another one, but Shark. So it's like Swarm Tank. So it's this similar idea like Shark Tank. We're on stage, and then you get to come up to the stage and pitch us your conspiracy. So that's kind of the idea. So it gets, you get interaction with the audience and whatnot, and you get to hear, get to kind of be funny and goofy, and obviously some discussions get more serious, but it's supposed to be fun and just kind of a good time. And then this last, like I said, this last time they were in Connecticut where we did this, Alex showed up, brought the pitcher. We're gonna give it to Sam so he could put it in his studio and have it in the background. But I live in Massachusetts, right over the border, and Sam's like, "Oh, it'd be a pain in the ass to kind of carry it because he was still on tour traveling." So I'm like, you know what? I'll put it in my studio. So that's the long story of behind that. But Alex is awesome. He's a huge podcast fan and listener, and I love hearing his story because he's like, I forget what he does for work, but it just helps him get through the day. He's like, they're always on, podcasts are always on. He's like, I'm constantly listening, and it helps me get through my day. And it really is, I can relate to that because that's how I got into podcasting initially. Was I was doing some torturous driving where it was just like hours and hours on the road, and it just helped me get through, that drive, and it made the drive actually exciting and fun, and I kind of almost looked forward to it because I could catch up on podcasts, and then also just helped me with a lot of other stupid stuff. Like I remember when I moved into this house, I was doing painting, painting the walls, and everybody kept asking, like, "Hey, do you need any help? Do you need?" And I kept saying, "No, I don't," because I just wanted to be left alone with the podcast on in the background while I painted, because I was just there, one with my thoughts. And I've always kind of enjoyed. It's weird. I'm like this weird mix of like I enjoy being around people. I've always been kind of a social butterfly, but I've always also enjoyed and appreciated my alone time. And I think you also as an artist, you kind of understand like the needs and the benefits of both, right?
yeah, I've always been kind of just an introvert. I don't know if all artists are introverts. Maybe it works that way. I don't think so. I think you get some pretty kooky out there ones who feed off of other people's creative energy. But for me, yeah, it's definitely been something where I have to retreat and sort of recharge and then see it work itself out and use me as the vessel to then create that in this world one way or another. But that poster behind you, it looks really cool. It's like it's well done and well drawn and everything. So it's a cool story of it coming together. Sam had a really awesome like Game of Thrones theme poster for coming to Edmonton, but I was like, I didn't even know that show was happening. I was out of town for the week. Otherwise, I would have stopped in and said, "Hey to everybody." That's really cool that the whole thing's going that well and that you're getting that much exposure and success through the community and Union of Unwanted and everything like that. Freaking awesome. Cool, dude.
Yeah, thank you. And that's an interesting point. Like I guess I assumed all artists kind of are if you're a real artist, because I feel like you require that alone time, right? And that's when, well, at least for me, and I guess not, maybe not everybody, because you can do it in groups. If you're doing music, you can kind of brainstorm together in groups and whatnot. But like, I think the writing process, like some of the best writing comes when you're just alone with your thoughts, and that time to kind of reflect, that time to really kind of look inward and kind of just like dig deep and maybe deal with some trauma or inner thoughts or feelings or whatever. So I mean, for myself, like growing up writing, I I saw it as therapy, and just this having that time to like self-reflect. I just feel like if we're too busy and we're constantly around other people, we're constantly analyzing things in the outside world, and we don't spend any time analyzing things in the inside world, I guess, for lack of a better term, if you know what I mean. So to me, I see benefits in both, because I enjoy bouncing ideas off other people, because sometimes if I'm spending a lot of alone time, I end up getting together with people and sharing some idea, and I'm like, you're right, that was stupid, and I'm glad I got together with other people to emphasize that maybe that wasn't well thought out. But and then you need that alone time, because if you're constantly go go go, busy busy busy, you don't ever spend any time really thinking about things and reflecting on things, which is really necessary too.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, I should have. I suck at this, don't I? I've how many episodes, and I still don't know how to end a sentence with a question. Um, well, speaking of questions, I'm sure some people are asking, like, "Hey, what brings Tease back to the show?" So, what have you been up to? What have besides growing facial hair? Like, what else have you been up to?
Well, I still make the show Conspiracy Synergy, but that's primarily research right now, and that's reading like so many books that it's ridiculous, and I hate it. So I was doing that for many, many months at a time. I still co-host the Wednesday segment of AM Wake Up. I'll occasionally pop in for filling in. Otherwise, we just did the Third Eye Conspiracy Carnival sort of thing this past weekend again in Pueblo, Colorado, and that just wrapped up in conjunction with their Truth Show. And now it looks like that's going to be a permanent thing. So it's going to be like an annual event that those shows are done together. So that's a bunch of artists and musicians and conspiracy people all coming together for a weekend and having a great time. So that's going to be something that expands, and I spoke at it, and it was really interesting because like the stream froze, so I was basically just talking to myself in an environment where I didn't know if other people could hear me for about 30 or 40 minutes, trapped and having to continue to talk because it's simultaneously a sound check. So it's a pretty interesting thing to have happen to you as a podcaster when you don't even know if you're live or not, but you have to keep talking and you have to be entertaining because you know you've got the mic in front of a room full of people, some of whom showed up just to hear you talk. So yeah, that was interesting. And I wasn't able to talk to Steve, which was the entire freaking plan. It's not like I was planning to give a lecture. I was supposed to be talking to Steve about the whole thing. But that was just this weekend. As far as my broader projects, I'm writing a script for another thing. I just put out my first feature film in a value for value capacity, free online. I was on the Corbett Report for that recently, and I recorded with Charlie and Monica and like Naughty with Nature Boy and a variety of other podcasts as well to talk about that. And that movie's called Hold Me. And so, yeah, I've been doing a variety of different things in a variety of different ways and just trying to live life. But for the most part, I'm more just devoted to work and keep my head in a book. That's my side of things anyway.
And what's the movie about, and where can people find it?
Okay, so the movie is so all of my creative projects are radically different from one another. If you've ever seen Conspiracy Synergy, you're used to laughing and seeing like rabbit puppets and little funny segments popping up at you, and it's very light, even though it's a dark theme. When it comes to the movie, it's more of a dark theme that we need to shed light on, that we need to talk about, and in doing that, bring forward a conversation that is going to be with us for the rest of our lives. And the conversation that's going to be with us for the rest of our lives is caregiving, be it that which we ourselves are necessary recipients of at one point in our lives. We're all going to get old. We're all going to need somebody to take care of us, but also we're going to be in a position to help take care of other people when they're in their most vulnerable place. So I made a film a number of years ago that, because of problems with the festival release, the festival collapsed for the world premiere. There was a variety of problems with that, and a shortage for distribution funds and other things because of the shifting of policy for the local media fund, which was supposed to reimburse me tens of thousands of dollars more than I ultimately ended up getting. So that cost me advertising. So in any way, I was burnt out from making this film that just sat dormant. I'd sent it out to like community of nurses and schools that taught people who went to nursing school so that they can use it as a conversational engagement piece in order to talk about end of life care and all that kind of thing. But other than that, and tiny drippings of exposure that it received because of that, it was largely dormant. And so I was thinking, well, because of the value for value model that we all sort of do all the time with podcasting and just talking to each other all the time, and I wanted to inspire that conversation, and I created this film to do just that. Why not bring it to a public forum and share it with everyone? And so that's the bulk of what I've been doing. And the film, Hold Me, it's about a woman whose job it is to hold and console people who are being voluntarily euthanized. And that's what I spent 5 years doing, and I've just recently re-released online for free for everyone.
And what inspired that topic for a movie?
So it's a lot of different things. A lot of the stories that I do, it's like I'm telling 50 different stories that touch on the way the characters are talking in the movie. And so it's basically a way of striking threads that we're all dealing with in our daily lives. And so the initial idea for it came with me. I was lying next to my girlfriend, and I had a vivid flash from an anthropology textbook of people who had been buried by volcanic ash. And the last thing that they had done in their moment of life was to hold one another. And I thought how beautiful of an insight that was to the way in which people are. In your final moment, you want someone to be there with you, to hold your hand. And so the next day I started writing the script, and I just kind of like felt it my way through it, and how it could touch on the ominous looming presence of the medical establishment, because the unspoken villain in many rooms is the room itself and what that connects us to. It is this sort of predatory environment that sells us a sale pitch that it's going to make everything all right, but then you really dig into it and it's just a nightmare. So palliative care, hospice, doctor assisted dying, all of that overlaps with that realm of things. And so it's not just one story, it's dozens of them.
It's funny how one little thing can spark, much bigger things, right? You get this moment of something, some creativity, some inspiration just strikes you, and then it turns into something else. What's your opinions on, the way we treat? I mean, I probably know the answer to this, so I'm asking a dumb question, but I'd like to get your insight. What, like the way we treat the older population in the U.S. compared to, well, I mean, I live in the U.S. My only experiences are seeing my immigrant friends and the way they treat their elderly, the way the Portuguese in Europe treat their elderly, and then the difference between that and the US. But I'm assuming Canada is probably very similar to US in regards to once they become a nuisance, you throw them in an old home.
That's pretty accurate as far as describing it. Yeah, is that's not the customary Portuguese thing, right? Like that that's more of a family take care of them dynamic, right?
Yeah, I mean, even when I was dating my wife, I remember she's like, "You still live at home?" I'm like, "Yeah." I mean, like family kind of lives together for a while, until like, you move, get married or whatever. And I had a lot of immigrant friends, so I just assumed like that was kind of known and acceptable. And I remember her kind of like, I'm like, "Oh God, she thinks I'm a loser," like, and I'm just like, I don't. And I remember explaining to her, I'm like, I really don't have a reason to move out besides like I get to brag that I live on my own because like my parents kind of they let me do what I want. I could kind of leave and come as I wanted as long as I was respectful to obviously them sleeping or whatever. I could go out, come home real late. It didn't really, it's not like I was restricted. Only I had my laundry done. I had food when I wanted to eat at home and and I got to hang out with my family a little bit more often than if I wasn't living at home. So to me it didn't make a whole lot of sense, this idea of like, okay, so you're moving out because you just want freedom, I guess. And I think maybe for females it is slightly different because I dated girls that it seemed like a lot of their motivation to move out was more to do with like that freedom because they were more restricted, where I think maybe males might be slightly different, because parents don't seem to be as worried, or as restricted with your freedoms. But even with our older population, like it was quite normal to take care of your relatives, your older relatives, and everybody kind of helped out. Everybody was a part of it. And then it seems like in America we have this, and this happened. I had a lot of these type of discussions and highlighting this issue during COVID because I thought it was just hilarious that all of a sudden the Americans acted like they cared about the elderly. When I'm like, you guys will be the first ones to send somebody to an old home because it's like, I'm too busy. I can't do it. Like, I got too much going on. It's like, I mean, I love my kids and I will do anything for my kids. And I hope that that connection and that love and me being present and building that relationship, I mean, I'm hoping I can be active and healthy for a long period of time, but God forbid, like if I get to the point where I do need help, I would hope that they would help. And but I get, I love talking out loud because I'm constantly like figuring out my thoughts while I'm sharing them. But like I can also understand, I guess, the perspective of being old and being like, you know what, I love my kids so much that I don't want to be a burden on their lives, and I want them to enjoy their life without me, restricting them. And then I would also hope that my kids would be like, you know what, Dad, you're not a burden, and we'll take care of you. So I don't know. I mean, I guess it's complex issues.
Yeah. No, it really is. So yeah, you touched on a number of different things there, and they all connect together in that framing of thought, which is the systems around us, our cultural impetus to either embrace them or to say no. It's a family matter where we're just going to take care of it ourselves. As far as whether that's men or women primarily, I don't know what motivates the decision. I think it's just a deeply personal thing, and also kind of just like how comfortable or uncomfortable the nest is, and if you feel the need to fly away, for everyone's sort of just different. But insofar as like the creating of the cultural milieu that sort of exists in the North American environment, where it's this nuclear family, or you just like you leave and you go and you create your family and you're a consumer, and all of a sudden you put the glasses on and you can see the fact that it's a part of a conspiracy that you're just supposed to buy things and reproduce. And then on the tail end of that, you kick your elderly to the curb and you ignore them so that they can rot in an elderly home and have gross or inadequate care provided to them by the various different services that are provided by the same government that just wants you to go to work and fucking make more. And so it's kind of just like this horrific treadmill that, by removing us from the caregiving responsibility that we have as a community with one another and as families, it has created this synthetic environment that we all exist in, and we slowly strip our deepest connections with one another as people because of it. Because as people, yeah, you go out there and you make those connections when you love someone, when you have a friend with someone, all that kind of stuff. It's through thick and thin. So when it comes to an end of life kind of thing, a lot of the time the weight of responsibility tears most deeply at your heartstrings. So that's something that we have been missing. And from the societal view of things, we think that it's a good idea to send them away to nursing homes and trust the systems, but oh wait, they're tragically broken. And on a deeper level, that, like you, Ricky, you understand, they're broken by design because they're entwined with all of these social engineer kind of things. Like from the Rockefeller medicine men, the perspective in that book, the way they define health is the ability to work. So that ties back into that entire picture I just painted, with you're literally going to work to be able to provide for the family, to create old people and then throw them in the garbage. It's all just part of a business model. And this fits into it, and what they anticipate will continue to do because we've been doing it for so long. And if you haven't practiced loving people or being loved, the idea of being near someone in that vulnerable of a place can just like overwhelm you immediately. So it's a tradition of numbing people down as much as dumbing people down.
Yeah, it, I wrestle with these ideas in my head because sometimes, I working in a capitalistic lifestyle where, like, my family has a little family construction company, and all the most successful companies in our industry are the biggest assholes you've ever met. Like, they're the majority of them, right? Like, not all of them. There's always exceptions to the rule, but the majority of them, all they care about is making more money. And so it's like the value they give back to the world is just hiring more people that they treat like shit and don't appreciate, and then convince them that, like, you should, this is a noble life of, like, just working so you can buy a house and then hopefully get a vacation once a year, and all your best, days and health goes to this company to grow. And it just seems like such a empty lifestyle and way to live. And then so when the discussions became more mainstream, this idea of universal basic income, right? Like, so I'm like, okay, my worldview, like, in a perfect world, I wish people could just do what they love and not worry about paying the bills, the stresses of paying the bills, feeding themselves or a family. Those basic just necessities were taken care of. And because I think a lot of people give value back, but to the world, they contribute to the world, but maybe the things that they're good at aren't things that financially, pay back well, right? And it's like a lot of the things I do, I'm constantly busy. The majority of the things I do, like, I see it as community service. Like, it's like I don't get paid for it. And the podcast makes minimal money. And obviously it requires some money to run it, as you know, and in regards to, like, just owning domain names, websites, services all related to it. that type of stuff. It obviously requires time to promote it and upload it and thumbnails and descriptions and putting together all that type of stuff. Um, and then, I spend a lot of my time coaching my kids and trying to be a positive influence in my community in regards to like just like, coaching kids and not taking for granted that, it's like that a quote I constantly repeat. It's like a good coach can change a game, a great coach can change a life, right? And I know that I can be a positive impact on just being like, hey, like being that adult that you can talk to, being that adult that's going to hopefully give you more than just sports lessons, but life lessons. And I don't take and also I know that I can be that adult that won't take for granted the privilege of being able to be a part of your life journey in some really important, years of your life. And I constantly tell other coaches, I'm like, hey, when you look back, there's adults that took time to talk to you, and there's adults that took time to give you advice, and maybe that adult didn't realize how significant it was that time that they spent with you, but it impacted you forever and it stuck with you forever. And I'm like, I never take for granted that I could be that adult for some kid, and also selfishly, I also get to be in my kids' lives a little bit more and participate in it because I'm coaching and involved and whatnot. But so all these things that I feel like I give value back, don't financially reward myself with anything. It rewards me in many other ways. Like I love podcasting. I love being able to be a part of these kids, get to know them, seeing them out somewhere and them coming up to me and being excited to see me and be like, hey, what's up, Coach Ricky? That type of thing. I love that. But in a perfect world, like people like myself or like you who spend tons of time creating stuff and contributing to the world in a positive manner, like we don't get ahead financially like the people who are like, hey, I just care about ones and zeros and quarterly gains and the bottom line, and I don't care who I fuck and who whatever. Like, so in the perfect world, if the universal basic income wasn't controlled and run by the same people who wanted to mandate vaccines, it would have been awesome to like have a world where like we could all share resources and do things and we could be told at a young age like, hey, stop pursuing this job that is going to get you six digits, but you're going to be miserable. And that thing that you enjoy, like I forget who said this, and it was such a great way of putting it. Find that thing that somebody else finds or would consider work and you consider fun or enjoyable or a hobby, and that's your thing, right? So like to me, like connecting with people for the podcast, writing emails, uploading thumbnails, whatever, doing research for a podcast, or just thinking about like, oh, what would be an interesting topic or guest to have on the show, like that never feels like work ever. Having these discussions, no matter if it's 1 hour or a 3 hour show, never feels like work. Coaching kids never feels like work. Like, telling people that like, hey, if that's your thing, like then that's your thing. Like you enjoy it. Somebody else would consider it torture. Somebody else would be miserable having to deal with those responsibilities and whatnot. And it's like in a perfect world, that's what we would want. Like, hey, find that thing you enjoy that maybe somebody else doesn't. I'm like, and that's your thing. And let's build on that instead of being like, hey, that doesn't make you money. Go become a lawyer or a doctor. By the way, lawyers are assholes and doctors are usually, and unless you own a practice, how many miserable doctors are overworked and smoking cigarettes during their lunch break and all this craziness, and it becomes a business, and this idea that like, hey, these things, even if you think you're contributing something positive, you're going to get caught up in an industry that really doesn't care about your moral compass, and they care about profit, and that's what's going to end up taking a grip of your worldview and whatnot. And then you end up becoming, because I do think, I know I'm bashing doctors, but like I do think some people get into it because they want to help others, right? And the same thing with police officers and whatnot. But I think when you have a culture of like, hey, if you really want to get that new Lexus, you got to push some pills, and or if you or if you're a police officer, hey, you might want to help people, but maybe there's some political bullshit with like, which there's a lot of infighting in police stations and whatnot. So, again, a long rant with very little points. Hopefully you found something worth expanding on.
Yeah, sure. No, like once again I track it as you run through all of it. And it's a number of different important points insofar as like the structural framework of the societal integrity that we exist inside of it is to push people to chase money, but at the same time, the things that we identify as the most beneficial things that we can offer the world are, like you described with yourself, coaching and being there for other people and talking and just sharing things with one another so that we can go out in the world and help rather than just feel like we need to work. And a lot of the time, what's worked for one person can be fun for another. So it is a matter of figuring that out. But much of the infrastructure that we're currently just hamsters in the wheel of is built there to grind us down by design. So it isn't just that we're made to do it, it's that it's done deliberately at our expense as people. If it wasn't for the way things are set up, we'd be able to get momentum. We'd be able to get on our feet and go out there and co-create with one another. And insofar as the caregiving paradigm, a simple metaphor for that, or not even metaphor, or an example of how you could put that into practice, would be of having people who are older hang out with kids because they revitalize one another, and it's an opportunity for community to be able to stay in touch and to sustain family intergenerationally and a variety of other things as well. You can think of an idea like that in a small town and it makes perfect sense. If you think of it in a city, it suddenly becomes kind of scary and you're all like, oh, no way, that's nonsense. So what we have to do is come back to a point culturally where the systems around us aren't the determinant of how we view other people, of how we view our roles with other people. And the best way to do that is to lead by design, exactly like you did by being a coach and by changing someone's life. So that's kind of just the imperative notion that comes from what's coming with the almost like, I don't want to call it a land mine kind of field or whatever that we're ahead of in the way war's done now, because it isn't just hot wars, it's like proxy trauma wars and how those come to like weigh on a population. You can think of like isolation during COVID being as traumatic as all the other different aspects of it combined and like what that does to the psyche over time. We're also looking at like the adverse consequence of like experimental injections, not necessarily what that will do because it's a variety of different things. And we could talk about that for a long time, what the experiment actually was in the experimental injections. But insofar as what that culminates as later on, it's a story about what we got injected into us. And when we tell people stories, that then defines their reality. So the reality of the future of the systems that we exist in that are predatory, that keep us from connecting with other people, are stories that then evolve those realities that keep us even more disconnected as people. So as bad as it was, it's designed to get worse. They might have triggered some sort of slow motion genocide. They may have done any number of different things using all these kind of pools of experimental populations. And that's all once again built by design within the allopathic model of medicine, which is itself derived from the same Rockefeller men I alluded to before, using their definition of human health as the ability to work. It's literally just like a continuum of the same gross mess of things that keeps us disconnected, alienated, and unable to really just pull together as a community and connect like you described. It's a hell of a thing.
It is. And as I'm going to generalize as an artist, and somebody, most artists do reflect on their emotions and whatnot. Have you went down, and I'm getting, it's definitely off track, but have you went down the rabbit hole of this idea of emotions being the life source for some other civilization? Have
I mean, like Loosh, you're talking about that, like from a
Yeah.
painful perspective. I think when you get into, okay, so I'll describe it thusly, and it's almost like different visuals and shingles that can transition one paradigm to another. So that's like if you look at the double slit experiment on a subatomic level, our perceiving something changes the parameters of the experiment, and it changes the physical dimensions that exist in our spatial realm. You can look at that in a larger scale of reference, and it then becomes your conscious intention while looking at water from Dr. Emoto's work is, oh, well, it then crystallize in these particular formations, which are emblematic of the focus that we put on something. So there's sort of a scale of building from a very small scale to another scale of our engagement with the shape that external matter takes. So then take that to another level beyond just that. You can look at like the stained glass windows in churches, and what those biogeometry insignia do is they make it so that it aligns with something inherent to nature, much like music and math. They're inherent to nature. And then that resonates with you. So it's one of those things where emotion, you can literally build it out of nothing. You can take it from the absence of anything and have it come into the world and look at it in those additional kind of like bigger and bigger steps until eventually it's this beautiful stained glass window before you that is the exact same way in which that emotion would crystallize from a different point of view. So it's kind of just like that iterative process of everything being the same, only and manifest in different artworks and different kinds of expression. Because if you're inspired in that way, then you can do anything and it becomes art on another level. So sifting through that emotional sewer in order to kind of like get rid of everything that you feel is unpure and then present the world with whatever's on the other end. Yeah, it's a hell of a thing. But it's I'd say finding that in nature, in yourself, and then finding the courage to share that with everyone else in what can be a very hostile environment online.
That's you always find a poetic way of stating your ideas. So what I was what I guess what I was referring to was so there's this idea, right? So I've been going down some fucking crazy rabbit holes because I'm just like there's something about the nature of reality that is obviously unknown, right? We obviously haven't figured it all out. But there's so many theories that I thought were crazy that now I'm entertaining a little bit more seriously. And
Okay.
one of them is this idea that our emotions is energy that is being used by some external civilization. And there and the reason what I guess what sparked me thinking about this is like we're talking about music, we're talking about movies, and I think about like one of my favorite movies, it's an independent movie called Ink, INK. I don't know if you've ever seen it. Phenomenal. Like it's one of those movies when I first saw it, because some independent movies are really bad. Like
Yeah.
you watch them and you're like, okay, either I'm gonna decide that this is like poetic, like incredibly well thought out, and there's all these metaphors that I'm just not picking up on, or it literally makes no sense and it's
Yeah.
ridiculous, stupid. And so because art just for the sake of art, like you're just trying to do something artistic, and it's not, there's nothing really there. Ink was one of those movies that like it was one of the few movies ever that I watched and like 5 minutes into it, I'm like, oh, this is gonna suck. This is gonna be awful. And then by the end of the movie, I'm like, this is one of my most favorite movies ever. And so you think about these movies and that move you, right? It was one of the movies that like really move you emotionally. And you think about like music that moves you. Like I grew up enjoying music that I got some type of emotional response. And then it makes me think like, why do we constantly strive to seek these emotional responses, right? Why did I enjoy reflecting on my inner thoughts and trauma and whatnot? Is it even beneficial, right? Like I've also pondered, and it wasn't my theory. It was it's something I've thought about, but I've there's a therapist that was on a podcast talking about how reflecting and how therapy is can almost be counterproductive, because if you spend too much time just constantly in that hole and thinking about it and reflecting it, you're constantly reliving it, and it can become counterproductive, which is an interesting take because most people think like, hey, if you talk about your issues and you talk about things like, hey, it's good, you're getting it off your chest, but does it get to a point where now you're spending too much time in that place, for lack of a better term? Like, and if you think about it, it kind of makes sense, because if you are describing a argument you had with somebody, in many cases, you start emotionally and physically reliving that argument. Like you get worked up again. And so if you're constantly talking about some trauma or something that had a negative impact on you, I can see how it can emotionally negatively affect you, because you're constantly reliving. It's hard to describe something that had a negative or some type of emotional impact on you. It's hard to just describe it and detach your emotions while you're describing it. Like it's why we give better advice than we take advice, right? Because when we're giving advice, I'm outsider, I'm neutral, my emotions aren't involved. I'm just looking at things logically, and I'm just telling you, my thoughts. But then when you're receiving advice, then a lot of times your emotions will obviously have a impact on the way you're looking at things or what you want to believe or not believe. So all these things are like, okay, what benefit do we have in constantly wanting to be? I mean, maybe a part of it is like wanting to feel alive, right? Like we always say that, like, oh, there's something about being emotionally impacted that makes you feel more human or more alive. But I don't even know what that means, and I've said it in the past. So I'm like, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, okay. So from a very specific taking the mythos of our energetic insignia from our emotions, because once again, Dr. Emoto's work, you look at water, you have a particular intention, it crystallizes based on that, and that's something that you can demonstrate repeatably in reality. That's an example of emotion being something that has an external manifestation. So simply the feeling of it is something that you can demonstrate around us. So that makes it a measurable and discernible quality of life. So if that's the case, well, then why can't someone have like a milkshake straw that they've shoved up the ass of the species and they're just sucking us every which way, and we're never going to get ahead because we're just their pet. And that's how they like to get their, I don't know, milkshake. That could be the case. I don't know. But I think what it is it's less of a personal, intelligent feast by some sort of civilization and more of how forces in nature work and what you align yourself with. And so if you think of it as more as just like currents in an ocean, if you go in a certain direction in that ocean with how you're feeling, then you can get swept up in things. Or you can resonate or you can reject them and it'll take you to different places. So emotion is sort of like a compass in the ocean of the realm that we exist in, and it resonates with things that we do not perceive in our traditional sensory apparatus are very real external phenomena. So that's when you get into like entity attachments. That's when you get into like the phenomenological overlap between hardcore drug use and demonic possession. That's when you start to get into the spectrum of things where you can look at savants and the degree to which they'll suddenly come to spontaneous abilities that are just incredible, shamanistic sort of inspiration that comes out of going mad at an early point of development to only then offer really profound abilities to the world after that. There are all these sort of like different realms that extend outside of our traditional sensory apparatus and then make it so that we're more comfortable engaging with that external phenomena, which is deeply entwined with our emotional state. It's almost like the entire realm we exist in is less of a digital matrix and more of an emotionally palatable, long form dream state that we exist in that becomes the story of the hero over time. So it's a really incredible thing when you think if we exist not necessarily as food for something or as prey for something, but rather in an environment that teaches us to navigate that environment with an increased refinement of skill set so that we're better as people simply for existing in it. I think it's more of just forces in nature that exist like that.
Yeah, this is the guy you're referring to, one of his books. Of
Yeah.
course, it starts off by saying advancing pseudoscience ideas, of course. They always do. They say the same thing about Rupert Sheldrake, anybody else that you know, it just science is so the thing about science, it's so egotistic, this idea that you guys have it all figured out and anybody who has a idea that goes against the grain is crazy. Morphic resonance, like, oh, it's pseudoscience. Well, if you just because you can't explain what's going on doesn't mean it's not happening, right? So it's the same thing with the water experiment. Just because you can't explain how consciousness or emotions or whatever is having some effect on how water is crystallizing, it doesn't mean it's not happening.
Yeah, no, it's not the minutia of semantic arguments has so deeply ingrained itself with people whose conflict of interest is just glaring that they're basically just owned by a variety of different companies, that the idea of having any necessary open and transparent conversation about the reality would bring those various different monopolies crumbling down in a way where they wouldn't recuperate. And so this is more to do with the vested interest of the aforementioned establishment infrastructure that was built this way to keep us behind. And as long as we continue to exist and entertain and be constrained by that paradigm, the species will suffer as a direct consequence of it.
Now, what do you think is that? So there's a lot of things that I think are connected, like the water thing kind of seems to reflect these ideas of the wise elderly when they talk about like, oh, us all being connected in one whole consciousness and all this stuff. I feel like water is kind of evidence of that. Like if we, this idea that there's consciousness everywhere and everything is conscious or connected in some manner. What's your opinion on it?
My opinion is that you can use any number of different narrative storytelling approximations to describe to another person things that you can agree on. And typically, I use different language varieties that people are well acquainted with in order to do that. To give an example of that in a way that you can easily visualize it, like hieroglyphics, we used to think of them in a way in which it was just like it's letters. So you write letters and then it's something very simple. But it's actually a much more profound esoteric communication about the nature of these forces that exist around us and our sort of poetic ballet that we do with them, both in life and in death. So that's something that extends well beyond the premise of what people would conventionally think of, because the death realm is a continuum of being alive. So that lends itself to a previous refined understanding of spiritual science as something that exists around us. We have just been very far removed from our alignment with it. And because we're removed from our alignment with it, we don't necessarily resonate with it, nor for that matter, go out there and disseminate it. So that's sort of a thing where if you have that conscious intention of love, you're able to go out there and put that into the world and see that proliferate thusly. But if you exist in the, say, brutalist architecture of square buildings, ley lines being sabotaged, this energetic warfare, the diet being poisoned, psychological operations, all these different kinds of mechanisms which are there to deliberately encumber and inhibit our development as a species, then you in essence just end up existing in more of an animalistic base resonant state, and you're less able to resonate with that higher aspiration of the species at large. So on that level, it becomes more of a tug of war between good and evil, which is manifest in this realm via our alignment with either involution or evolution. And the easiest way I can describe this to you in any given situation is this: is it love or fear? Because those are the two things that you're choosing from at any given time. Are you operating with the utmost highest pitch of love, or is there some sort of quiver or shake in that sentiment that then sees it become a different formation? Because if you think of things, there is that absolute formation of love, because we're describing emotion becoming external things, emotion entwining with external things. Even if you're playing it with a guitar string and you look at how that water, as you were describing, then comes to resonate on a table, it's different kind of ripple effect. So if you go out there with the ripple effect and ripple in a particular way that resonates with the population, then that's something that ultimately changes the waters that we all exist in. And that's the war. That's the paradigm. It's how you're able to resonate in the middle of being accosted from every different direction in a timeless spiritual war. That's what it is to exist in this realm.
So how Tesla's quote, like if you want to understand
369.
first, what's that?
369.
Isn't that that's that reminds me of a song by Rey Mysterio's theme song, the WWE wrestler. Isn't it 369 or is that a rap song 369? No,
I
it's
don't know.
619.
Uh,
I'm getting all my area codes fucked up. But it's what was I just saying? I was talking about
well, Tesla. Well, I was wondering if you're going with a quote for Tesla, if it's to understand the mysteries of the universe. Go ahead.
yeah, yeah, that's exactly it. That if you want to understand the mysteries of the universe, you have to understand frequency, energy, and vibration, right?
Yeah.
And how does that connect to the things we've been discussing? Do you think like how because music, this idea of like music is guitar strings vibrating, right? And our connection to that emotional connection to maybe hearing certain vibrations and certain tones, I wonder if that is connected in some way.
Well, okay, so I'll put it this way. From my own creative perspective as an artist, a big part of what my process is to listen to music. And from looking at music in the effect that it has in your neurosynapses and how it affects your neuroplasticity and what's elicited within your mind as a direct result of that, by listening to music, you're feeling emotional states, which can then bring about visual, sort of vivid compositions that come out of the depths of your person. And it was inspired by those notes. So that's another way in which by listening to something, you can feel something before you've ever experienced, and then you approximate the experience out of the feeling. That's a really incredible thing that music can offer us because it's almost like a developmental jumpstart. You're so deep in the resonance of existence that you're able to create out of resonance. And that's really something that we've been able to do over and over again. You can like use harmonics as the thing that triggers a particular physical response. Another example of this would be in, I believe it was back when it was called the Czechoslovakia. They had a shortage of like sharp razor blades, and so an individual had looked at the exact mathematical shape of the pyramids, the exact specific dimensions of it, done a scale replica on a smaller level, put things inside of it, and if the razor blades that were dull and rusty were put in there, they'd become sharp again. So that's a pretty interesting freaking idea between the entwinement between different shapes, emotional resonances, and then the condition of external reality, all the way down to the subatomic level, moving up through the things that we find beautiful in art, the Fibonacci spiral kind of thing. And so my art is inspired by listening to music first to get that kind of thing going, come back to it, logically reflect on it, build off it, learn from it, and then it ultimately entwines with reality and how synchromysticism comes to emerge co basically. I don't want to say that it's fighting you, but it's one of these things where it's like a shadow, basically. It's as you go forward creating anything, you're going to be learning from it and it's going to be changing you. And it's like a co-evolutionary growth of the creative process inherent to, or let's say, enmeshed with something that is just deep, deep, deep bedrock of nature.
So why do you think we're attracted to these emotional effects, these the music that moves us, movies that get a emotional reaction out of us? Like what is it? If it's not aliens using it as energy, energy source, what do you think it is? That what
I think we so it's a really good question and it's important. Like, how would I describe it? I think that it's basically like a hero's journey, dream state trajectory of refining your ability to be kind and love and to know and understand things, and to do that over lifetime and over lifetime in different manifestations and experience. And evil exists as the adversary to teach you more about the depths of yourself and existence. And it's a beautiful poetic metaphor and a dance, and we do it from one life to the next. And that's what I think that it is. And it also sucks most of the time because that's motivation to get off your ass and do things.
so it to because I'm an idiot. So just to simplify it for me, it's
You're not an idiot, Ricky.
so it sounds like what you're saying is maybe we're attracted to it because it helps us better understand ourselves and the world around us.
No, I'm literally saying it's almost like, so time's non-linear. You, from a reincarnation perspective, you basically accept the things that are a consequence of entering into this realm. Much of that is directly entwined with previous actions, decisions, or sentiments taken in past incarnations, and all of it is ultimately more of like a game or a ride, or I wouldn't call it an illusion or a simulation, even though you could use that kind of like approximate description, because the thing that is existing on the most base level of existence from which our emotional state ultimately resonates with most highly is something that manifests through the vessel of humanity. We're entwined with it. It speaks through us. It's kind of just something that we're drawn to because we're a part of it. We're not separate from it. It's not like you can ever, it's like, are you drawn to breathing? It's like, no, you literally have to do it to consider yourself surviving. And at the exact same time as that, if you push survival to different thresholds, you can think of people like Wim Hof. Well, that's breathing in a cold state in a different way. You can think of people who are buried in really, really deep meditative states. There was one dude in the 1800s who had his tongue rolled up, swallowed a damp or it was a dry rag to absorb bile, and then they buried him for 40 freaking days under British watch. They had royal guards like looking over the dude to see that he was not disturbed for 40 freaking days while he was buried underground in a meditative trance. They brought him up, rubbed him with some oils, got him back to be awake again. So on every different and on a point of how we exist, what our emotional state is, what the effects of that on our physiology are, or external reality, it's literally all interconnected. And that's kind of just the ballet that these sort of Lego block kits of the hospital system and all of that convinces us to exist within, because then we throw our loved ones there and they become a corpse instead. And that's sort of the big picture brushstrokes of all the different things that we're talking about. The beauty of what life is and what these systems are, juxtaposed with the evil that we're beset by and we're duty bound to overcome. You know?
So do you think there, so you said reincarnation. Do you believe in reincarnation? Do you think
No, I
that?
think it's like an absolute, I think it's a well-established thing, but it was deliberately obfuscated, occulted, hidden, demonized, and overly simplified or misattributed in the consciousness of the species over long stretches of time. And you don't even have to think of that as a sinister agenda. It can literally just be the consequence of leaning towards a left hemispheric perceptual lens, which is basically just like speaking English or Germanic roots of language. That makes you think that way more. So a lot of this stuff isn't just, well, what is it? It's also, how do we view it? Do we have an aptitude for it? Also, it's all of this different stuff at the same time.
Well, if we can consciously have some type of emotional or some type of or physical effect on water based on our emotions or consciousness, I mean, it kind of makes you think that, okay, there is a connection between all of us, everything living alive on this planet. There's some type of connection, which, and again, makes reincarnation more believable because it's like, okay, we die, we disintegrate, or something dies, our physical body dies, we disintegrate, we go into the earth, into the soil, which eventually will turn into grass, which is eaten by some animal, which then is eaten by some human that eventually also ends up dying. And it just seems like this cycle of life, right? And so this idea that we're all connected seems very much plausible and believable. And I guess the part that people have a hard time grasping is like the emotional, the memories being all connected also and being a part of that journey of life and cycle of life. Because when you look at like epigenetics, for example, when they've done studies, which obviously you're aware of, and I probably repeated a few times on the show about the completely synthetic scent that they would spray and then shock the mice, and it was a scent that was never existing in the natural world, so they could have never been exposed to it previously. And every time they would smell that scent, they would have a panic reaction. And then for 2 generations later, without ever shocking the mice, they would have the same panic reaction when smelling that scent. So, and then it was kind of just evidence that there's something that we're inheriting that is more than just eye color and skin color and hair color and whatnot, but possibly trauma. And maybe some of the trauma and memories that you're dealing with aren't even yours, their past generations. So like I feel like that these things are all evidence that there's something about the nature of the universe that we still don't quite understand, and we could be completely way off on just our current understanding of things.
Oh yeah, no, it's a great example, and it's an important frame of mind to look at this with, because I think that you're fundamentally right. But I'd go so far as to contend that not only do we not understand it now, we used to understand it a long time ago, and we understood it a long time ago in a variety of different capacities that, depending on your lens through which you view history, the befuddled mess that it is, and that we're increasingly deciphering as a community. Because like you were saying earlier, some of the things that you used to think were crazy, you look into them more, and now it's like, well, what do I even freaking believe? What's the basis bedrock axiom from which I view reality, and what its ultimate most significant purpose is? And I could sort of attest to that in a very simple way from my viewpoint and offer that, which is that, and I've spoken to Crow about this, Crow 777, who I think we're all familiar with. And the example that he likes to give is that you can watch a cloud and a rock, and they both dissipate over a long enough period of time. So they're in essence more or less the same thing, which is just like, it's that same process happening in external reality, just at different rates. But if you think of the idea of murdering someone, at no point does that become something that is moral? You can think of changing the contextual framing of that and bring it to self-defense or killing and that kind of stuff, and that can be moral. But the view of semantics of morality eventually becomes something which is timeless. And so, if it's timeless in the midst of things that erode and dissipate around us, doesn't that speak volumes about our purpose? What is most timeless in our midst? We think of like gold. We resonate with it. We gravitate towards it. From one perspective framing of reality, it's a consequence of supernovas, so it entwines us with stars. You can think of a different perspective on it, and this is incorrect. It's fictional, but it's basically of the Anunnaki, the idea that they would eat gold in order to, by ingesting it, garner its powers. From the alchemical lens, the view of transmutation, gold being in the insignia of a refined development of oneself and their abilities and their spiritual refinement as well. So it's one of those things where it's literally all of it. And it becomes so sophisticated that when you're born into the lie, it's almost like it takes time for you to go as a seed from where you were as a human being in the introductory development all the way to being a tree. Think of being a conspiracy theorist and going from a tiny little seed of, wait, there's this one thing wrong, to actually becoming a full grown oak of understanding how all of these different things interconnect and intertwine. And that's the sort of the hero's journey paradigm that we've been given. It's incredible. It's scary at the same time though, because they want to cut down the trees.
Well, and these topics are all connected because something you're talking about is wisdom, and it's something our understanding of the universe maybe was better understood and in time has been lost. And that kind of, that's kind of highlights some of the issues we have with today's worldview and the way we live our lifestyles, of this idea of like just kind of not caring about all our elderly and whatnot. And I remember there's an old documentary, this independent documentary filmmaker who did a documentary called Owned and Operated. And I remember he had a clip from Craig Ferguson in the documentary. And I remember having him on like years ago when I first started podcasting, the filmmaker, not Craig Ferguson. But I had the filmmaker on. We're talking about this clip that he used, and this where Craig Ferguson talks about how, like, when he was growing up, you looked up to the elders, right? Because you could extract some wisdom, and you want to hear their stories, and you want to learn from their experiences. And then we had a cultural shift where now, instead of celebrating the wisdom of the older people, we end up celebrating the recklessness of the younger people. And when you look at, like, speaking on the topic of lost wisdom, that all contributes, because when you're not extracting wisdom from the wise, and we're celebrating recklessness and being young and idiotic and reckless, then it makes it easier for those old lessons and us to grow as a species. It kind of stunts our growth, and it hurts us as a species.
Yeah, bro, you're so spot on. I completely agree with that. And I think that um basically I mean, like, talking to Monica about it, she described, from, I think she's Catholic. I think that's what she is. She was describing that it's like one of the things that you do to get into heaven is you care for someone in the end of their life. So it's like these are very much systems that are designed to remove us from um, that just side of existence. And it very much has that degradation of what we turn to, because we're removed from that wisdom and we just exist in that soup of dopamine for what we're clicking anytime that we go online. And those are environments that are designed to change us over time. So it's a hell of a thing. We have pushed the most vulnerable people away, isolated ourselves, and we're bathing in a soup of emotional acid.
Now, I heard Jimmy Dore say this on his recent appearance on Joe Rogan. By the way, how fucking crazy is that James Corbett was on Jimmy Dore recently? I don't know if you saw that yet. It's like, where have we gotten, where we've gone to the point where, like, James Corbett was my very first guest on this show ever in 2013. And I would send people links to him, and people were like, oh, that's a conspiracy, that, whatever. And now he's on a pretty mainstream show, a huge mainstream show, at least mainstream in
Yeah.
regards to, like, not, mainstream media, but mainstream in, like, YouTubers, podcaster community. And and people are not laughing at his ideas and theories and
Yeah.
historical perspective, but they're actually they want to learn from him. And now it's awesome that the rest of the world is learning that James Corbett exists, and hopefully will be exposed to his work and taken in a serious manner, because it is serious work and he's done some amazing work throughout the years. But back to Jimmy Dore, the idea that he said something that I think it's a lot of us have dealt with and can relate with, is this idea that, like, we grew up, speaking of Monica being Catholic, I also was raised Catholic, and I had an issue with religion, right? Like, I had this issue of, like, okay, I saw it as a method of control. I saw it as a this, who are you to know, to have all the answers and know everything, and me wanting to rebel and go against the grain made me dislike religion, organized religion. And unfortunately, what I did for a long time was also combine religion with spirituality, and they became the same thing. And I thought they were the same thing. And then, I disliked one, so I must dislike the other, right? And I grouped everything together. And Jimmy Dore said it on the Rogan podcast that because now he's become much more spiritual and whatnot, and his dislike of being raised a Catholic was what made him dislike spirituality or anything that would seemed, that you could group into those categories. Um, what's your journey in regards to spirituality and religion? Did you have a similar story? Like, where do you stand now as you get older? Or do you find yourself also being more spiritual? Maybe it's not so much age contributing to that, but maybe it's more of uncovering, these mysteries of the world, and maybe that has contributed. But what's your personal journey with that?
Well, as far as like the experience that you described with like conflating religion with spirituality, I did that when I was younger as well, because there wasn't really an explanatory framework that was presented to me. There was only the encumbrance of the church to what might otherwise be very important lessons to life. But in your youth, it wasn't necessarily something that resonated with me or was pushed upon me by a community. So it's something that I didn't necessarily engage with, or for that matter, find purpose in. It's something that I've more come to through the conspiratorial pursuits, because as you go through the various different echelons by which our reality comes to emerge, and then what it later reveals itself as, it is a spiritual thing. I describe this very simply and very succinctly in the layers that I've gone over a number of different times on a number of different shows, but those are the perceptual layers of how we go about our day-to-day existence in this realm together. And that's on the surfaces. You have corporations, under that you have governments, under that you have deep states, under that you have secret societies, under secret societies you have ideologies, and under ideologies you have objective things that are inherent to nature and existence, actual truth. And so that's how things sort of work. And we do our best, born into one level of conscious awareness of that, to swim all the way down and understand it on its highest level, to then be able to share that amongst ourselves while we're here. And so I started thinking, fuck all that. But my experience and exploration of it, in part, was the conspiratorial community, the learning side of it that I just described. And the other side of it is the experiential gnosis of basically my artwork, and the experience of entwinement between my art and synchromistic happenings around me as I go through life, and how things will happen or stories will emerge, and all these different threads of just how life's a story. It's kind of just poetic. And as that happens to me, it's something that I understand better, but it's not really something that I worship. It's more something that I dance with. And it's not something that I have a choice about. I'm sort of stuck existing. And so I just do everything that I can to try and be true to the feeling, which is the depth of the motivation for every decision I have made on my journey up to this point as an artist and as a person. So that's kind of just the full culmination of the idea of religion to spiritualism to losing it to finding it as an artist and a researcher, and then presenting it to the world through the work that I do.
So do you tend to believe that religion wasn't created for the purpose of controlling people? And
It was. It was.
okay, so if it was, then because there is some wisdom that comes out of it, right? And there's some
Yeah,
influence
yeah, yeah.
in
Yeah. So Well, here, let me throw this at you to see if like because the way to describe it, it's the lock and the key. They give you the key to eternity, but then they like lock you away with it. So it's like you're right because they're giving you all of that. It's like here it is, and you're like, holy shit, whoa. But then, oh yeah, they lock you away with this institutional religion stuff. So it's that kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I do. I'm just curious about like your opinion on like the origin story of it. Was it a method of control from the beginning, or was it something that wasn't a method of control and then was used as a tool to control? You get what I'm saying?
It's kind of Yeah, it's kind of a pendulum swing between both, and it's an important distinction to make. So you can look at like monotheistic religions as being derived from uh, what were in essence astrotheological cults that preceded them. But you can also look at things as being archetypically reflective of things that are inherent to nature. And once again, as I touched on earlier, nature is something that is both there and it also is influenced by the perceptual lens that views it. So the perceptual lens that views human experience and consciousness and spirituality and all that kind of stuff has gone from a right hemisphere modality to a left hemisphere leaning. And what that's done in conjunction with how everything's sort of just been manifesting and materializing is made us more machine-like in the way in which we think, the way in which we perceive things, the way in which we describe stories. Like if you'd be more likely to get someone to understand Star Trek than you would some sort of ancient religious text, you know? And I'm talking about like from a Buddhist perspective or something like that. We just think in a more machine-like way. So I think a lot of this has to do with the ebbs and flows of our perceptual lens. That's an important part of it too.
Is the human experience decaying, and what will, in regards to like the world that we cherish and love and the interactions with others and caring? I mean, how do you see, what do you think is moving us in the direction of this transhumanism? You know,
Yeah.
is it control? Is it something greater? Is it something bigger? Are we creating the God that we speak of? You know,
No, you're pretty spot on with that, actually, as far as like an approximation of like the story trajectory for what we're like head on facing and how fucked it is. But it is, in essence, sort of like you can't create an AI that would think on the level of the science fiction that they're describing it with, but you can create a vessel for something that exists in nature to occupy. So it's an important point of distinction. They're ritualistically creating the environment to summon this thing in. And what this thing is a force in nature, which has been an accompaniment to us our entire existence. It just hasn't necessarily had a materialized sort of framework by which to go about directly engaging us in the material realm. Instead, it's been more of just like this entity entwinement kind of demonic, angelic, deeply inner force that is always there with you at every single moment. That force that a lot of people will point at and say that's the devil is actually more of a force in nature that flows through all of us and will as long as we exist in this realm. So the transhumanism thing, you can look at once again what I was talking about with stuff that's objective and inherent to nature, like math and stuff like that. Tesla was sort of alluding to that. Well, when you get into the idea of the creation of the number zero, that's not something that exists. It emerged from a period of meditative practice that was the low point of what they were striving for. Most meditative practice in India at that time was like, hey, let's experience divine, wonderful insight and nirvana and all this incredible stuff. And then they hit a particularly low point. And they pooped out this concept of zero. And that concept of zero has impregnated our notion of what exists objectively in nature, but nothing doesn't exist. It's a concept that destroys itself, but you can create that construct as a concept that you then impregnate our mathematics with. And then that has a consequential weight that adds to our brains and how we perceive the world around us, so that we literally eventually, through our ritualistic actions, co-create the machine that modality of thought has created in us, that we then create around us. And it's just like this hamster wheel back and forth that by existing in these synthetic realms away from love, we will continue to plunge headlong into. And that's the hero's journey. We have to. It's something that it doesn't exist in nature, but we can create it out of a falsehood, the simulacrum of the binary world of the digital. And so that's an incredible concept if you think of it, that we can expand reality with our delusion and then create a realm of delusion to lure humanity in. It's that whole like long stretch formation of this shit unfolding in the species for like fucking millennia. It's surreal.
I like what you said about the zero doesn't exist, the nothing doesn't exist, right? It's kind of like so there's this YouTube channel called the Y Files, and they've done they have a good episode about these suppressed technologies about, free energy, people who've found ways of making free energy, 0 point energy, whatnot. And then if you listen to like Terrence Howard, right? This idea, a lot of his, I find him incredibly fascinating, and I don't think Eric Weinstein on his recent appearance with Eric Weinstein did him a whole lot of justice, because I think Eric Weinstein cared much more about the way the community was looking at these ideas and cared more about getting the respect of the community than he cared about like, hey, let's talk about these specific ideas and like really dissect them. And it always went back to, well, they're gonna laugh you out of town. They're gonna they're not gonna accept this because you said this. It's like, well, let's talk about what he said and like stop worrying about what everybody thinks. But I get it. He's in a community where they care about being accepted in that community, and maybe it does have some long-term benefits in regards to people taking you seriously, and being other people wanting to work with you and whatnot. But this idea that there is no zero, there is, it's a made up, man-made thing. It kind of makes you think about the yin yang idea of like, there's a yin and a yang. We breathe in, we breathe out. There's never a nothing, right? And all these this empty space, we like to refer to, like there is no such thing. There's something everywhere, and it just, I love this idea of having energy everywhere, about just our lack of understanding of our universe and world. And I wonder if the creation of the zero was a way of getting us, or maybe it wasn't on purpose, but it was accidental, making us think that there's less there than there really is, right?
Dude, that's so it. That's exactly the culmination of the adverse effect that it has on the spiritual identity of the human being. Because then you're in the contextual realm of existence from a basically scientism perspective of dogmatic, materialist, evolution oriented, come from monkeys, are not a divine entity that was co-created in a vast spiritual realm that is reflective of our state and consciousness in order to then explore it in a magical, holy fuck, I can't even believe Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure like 50. That's the kind of shit that we exist in. But we start off in this sort of normieville training wheels variant, and the realm that we actually exist in, how crazy it is and has been, and could potentially become if we realize sort of who we are again. It's incredible. So it's just, man, it's one of those things where I keep coming back to the idea that if people find inspiration with what's happening and manage to sort of move their mindset away from how depressing everything that's happened has been, then that can be the catalyst for what not just you but everyone needs. And so really just that mindset of getting back in the game, as brutal as it is and how much we might not even want to play, that's sort of I don't know, like in your own felt sense of it, Ricky, over the past few years, have you felt like your emotional capillaries sort of withered or worn, or do you feel like your heart has grown?
That's a good question. I don't know. I feel like I feel like I'm in a weird place though, since COVID, really. In a way, like a lot of things have improved, in regards to like, I feel like people are waking up. I feel like, but in another way, like there's maybe some anxiety I don't remember having before, where I'm like, now I'm also a little worried that things are speeding up a little too quickly. It's almost like like everybody's, like, the good news is everybody knows we're in a matrix, but the bad news is we have to like face the fact that we're all in the matrix, right? You get what I'm saying? Like we
There, they're starting to understand the nature of reality extends well beyond the margins that they previously experienced and are attempting, sometimes very well and other times in a befuddled way, to describe the nature of that reality as the stage around them changes what is acceptable to believe as real. So the stage around us, it's almost like hatching in a way. It's like you can accept this as real now. So it's like it sort of does feel like it's all happening really quickly around us as that sort of hatching of the cosmic egg occurs.
Yeah, and I'm curious if maybe it not being publicly accepted, like all these conspiracies and all these things of like you said, the nature of reality and how things really work and whatnot. Like I almost feel like people not accepting it made it easier for us to detach from it, right? Like because it's like if I wasn't talking to you, I could go to the grocery store, I could go to the coffee shop, I could go out to eat with my friends, and nobody talks about it because they're all just delusional and brain.
Yeah.
And now, like, we all know. And because most of us know, it's almost like shit. Like, I can never unplug, right? Like it's almost like, and it's funny. It's almost what we wanted. I wanted. I mean, I remember for years talking to James Corbett about this, how we thought it was hilarious that neither of our wives gave a shit about what we did or wanted to talk about any of the things that we ever wanted to talk about. And initially it seems like a flaw, and and it's a bad thing. But after thinking about it, it's like, well, you know what? Maybe we do need to be able to detach for a little bit and be away from these issues that can kind of bring you down and be emotionally draining.
Yeah.
But now it's almost impossible to detach, right? And
Yeah, dude, so spot on.
fuck.
No, but I think what it is because think of like the cosmic egg hatching metaphor. Some of us are further along in the process of coming to terms with this information, facing it, and stepping up to where we need to be. A big part of that is basically approaching the ledge of responsibility. If you think of exiting the nest, eventually you're gonna have to jump. You're gonna have to look over the side of that motherfucker and being all like, "Okay, well, I'm jumping or I die." And so that's kind of one of those things. Baby sea turtles, they come out of the eggs like under like freaking Normandy beach fire. It's like baby deer are born running. The wolves are chasing them already. So it's one of those kind of like just shifts in the process of the evolutionary axis of the species where those of us who are further along, we've jumped off those ledges. I'll just say this, the difference between falling and flying is looking up, learning to steer. So that is one of those things where it returns to that idea that I was talking about before in a metaphysical lens between choosing love or fear.
Now, I had this issue during COVID where I like so we have a little family business, and like all little family businesses, everybody kind of has a lot of responsibility in the business because you're just trying to stay afloat, so everybody wears a lot of different hats. And I wear quite a few hats in the business in regards to just invoices, quotes, emails, organizing, managing, all that type of stuff. And mostly because my parents don't speak any English, so it's like it requires uh
Nice.
which can make things difficult but in regards to paperwork. But I remember talking to Mel K, and I'm just thinking like I was so upset about what was going on during COVID, and I was so upset about just it infiltrating so many people and so many people being brainwashed, and the things that the government was getting away with, things that big pharma was getting away with, the negative impact it was going to have on just the planet itself, that I had a hard time focusing on work and was really like kind of doing a really shitty job of helping run the business because I just could not focus because everything else that I was doing seemed insignificant and not important, and I felt like I should be using my time to do other things. And don't get me wrong, I struggle with that most of my life. Like most of the time, I feel like how can I focus on making more money and growing the company when there's all these other more important things that I'd rather spend my time on and energy on. And um do you ever struggle with that, like because you ponder on these things because you have a better understanding of the universe and the importance of all this and these topics, how interesting they are? does it make like everyday life a little bit just more difficult to because I constantly feel like every many other things in my life that I should be doing, it's like, well, who gives a fuck? Because it's like, we're all gonna be fucking robots one day, or we're all gonna like we're fighting transhumanism, or like the nature of the universe could be suppressed by, and maybe
Uh,
what is it, General Byrd who went to Antarctica? Maybe he knows something, and maybe the Knights Templar are hiding something, and maybe there's the elites and the cultists of people are hiding stuff, and it's like you ponder and ponder on all these things, and then the Terrence Howard I think has sparked a lot of these conversations, and many people and many others, of course, like Graham Hancock and others who make us kind of reconsider what our ancient civilizations knew and understood. But like all these bigger questions, my point is like all these bigger topics and subjects, like we're constantly zooming out. And I feel like sometimes to deal with everyday tasks and stresses and responsibilities, like you have to just kind of zoom in and be like, okay, I can't hang out here
yeah,
forever. Like I need to zoom in and be like, okay, let me just do this fucking stupid paperwork that I know is meaningless, and it just like this job's meaningless, and this is all, and I'm talking to people all they care about is making more money, and they don't like they just don't seem to have a real understanding of like the importance of our existence and whatnot. And it's just like it's hard to do you ever struggle? Do you know what I'm talking about? This have you ever had the struggle of like zooming in and just doing this every when you
yeah.
spend so much time
So
zoomed out?
no, no, like I hear you, and I guess I see it as when the stars align. Because if you look into spiritual literature about like the most significant events, it's basically on a level of intention, intention preceding action, preceding the doing, which then becomes. So it's a sequence of things, and it's really bringing it back to that focal point of really just trying to have the best intentions, the utmost love, but you also live in reality. So people with the best intentions can be led astray. That's why it's important to calibrate with truth. But the ancient sort of mystery traditions have always talked about the idea that this is a spiritual incarnation. You are doing that every single moment with your every thought, intention, action, and what comes about into the world, not necessarily directly as a consequence of that. It can be a consequence, but it's more like leveling up is us responding better to stuff that's shitty so that it becomes less shitty the more that we're around. It isn't expecting things to ever not be shitty. And the process of going about that in a fine minutia of just a regular day by day, like working 40 hours a week, feeding your family, that is still a spiritual journey. People think that it has to be some like guru thing or some like tucked away, whatever. No, no, no. Literally, it's in the minutia of the fabric of your motherfucking existence. It is your every damn thought and action. If you look at ritualistic dance going back to esoteric traditions, those dances are the practiced actions which entwine with the previous consciousness of the people who did that dance. Similar to how Ricky was describing the epigenetic emergence of different generations of mice. Yeah, that happens with people as well. And it's all entwined in nonlinear time. So it's one of those things where once you find that resonance on a higher level of truth, it's almost like you level up and then you go out and do you. And you go out and do you in your daily 9 to 5 fucking world, kicking ass and doing everything really well. You can look at it from a Japanese perspective. It's the refinement of everything that you do. It's the art of perfection. And by having that kind of respect for everything, it creates that culture as a result.
Well said. I guess I won't call out of work tomorrow. Yeah, no, that you're right. 100% right. Like 100% of the time you are 100% right. uh it is I find it, it's weird because when you think about like the way things are, right? The world we live in, the way we trade goods, the way we make a living, like all these things, it's there is a lot of just mindless tasks that we're forced to do, but i- you don't have to be consumed with all these other topics to or I mean maybe you can be consumed with all these topics and still do those everyday tasks that that are necessary to do to survive, and the
Yeah.
civilization where we live in.
Yeah, I think ultimately, as we grow up and mature as a species, we'll not only do that on the larger kind of scale of what we weren't privy to before the internet, but we'll also have changed the systems that we exist in to be more comfortable, and our sensory apparatus will extend beyond the conventional so that we'll start to experience like poltergeist, ghost, like whatever verbiage you want to use to describe that realm of shit, that will start to become more of an active participant in our experiential reality. But that's over like long form developmental margins. Insofar as like right here, right now, literally just be a good person, help out your community, work hard, don't be bogged down by the big shit. It's okay to unplug a little bit, but every single moment that you're here, it still factors into what happens as a result around you. So that's one of those things where just taking a breath can make all the difference in the world, and then you can be the hero again.
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah. I mean, even with sports for a long time, I couldn't enjoy sports. I remember when I started my podcast for a long time, I couldn't, I'm like, it's mindless entertainment. They're just better things I could be doing and watching. And after a while, I'm just like, you know what? It's okay to have something, or maybe more than just one thing, have a multiple things that you do just for unplugging and enjoying. And even if you know it's meaningless or pointless or whatnot, you can find some enjoyment out of it. And if you get some enjoyment out of it, maybe it's worth experiencing and worth doing and and exploring. So yeah, it's this whole life journey is it's fun and confusing and scary and you know all the other words and feelings that you can use to describe it, but it definitely is fascinating. And I've said it before on the show, like I kind of feel like, and I think you're probably very similar. uh I feel like I'm just trying to gather puzzle pieces, hoping that I get enough puzzle pieces to for the image to become clearer, or at least have some type of understanding of what the image is. And Daniele Vignelli, he said it years ago on my show, that knowledge for knowledge's sake is just pointless, right? If you're just people who regurgitate information just so they can brag about how much information they've remember and can regurgitate, it's just pointless. It's like you should be seeking out information that helps you better understand yourself and the world around you, and that's information worth exploring. So that's kind of the fun thing about this podcast, is I can just ask you a bunch of random questions and kind of share ideas and whatnot. And that's kind of the social part that I enjoy, right? And like today I was at a computer most of the day, very little human interaction. It was more just emails and quick little phone calls or whatever. And I didn't I always feel like a zombie when I have those type of days. I come out and I feel, I don't feel emotionally or physically or mentally great. But after a podcast, right? Like when I have an hour, 90 minutes or whatever it may be of interaction where we're sharing ideas and talking, I always end the podcast kind of feeling like, wow, I contribute something. Like I feel like that conversation will contribute to the universe in a positive way. And I feel better, like emotionally and mentally and physically. So even though that alone time, I think it is nice from time to time and probably beneficial. Uh, I definitely seem to enjoy and feel better when I have these type of conversations and get to bounce ideas off one another and learn, do what maybe our earlier civilizations did, and take wisdom from people that might have it.
Yeah, no, it's a really important insight, really, the idea of what you gain from stepping away from it. Yeah, it's such an interesting trajectory. It makes me think of how, yes, it is about having these conversations with one another to revitalize and regain energy and all that kind of thing. But at the same time, it makes me think about the nature of the conversation that we're having, because it isn't just us, it's something that exists in sort of this lingering, floating way that can be discovered in the immediate future or in the distant as well. So it's a time capsule as well as a conversation. It's a conversation forum for someone else's conversation. It's a point of reflection, and it's a documentation of the times that we live in. So it's a really interesting thing that our emotional trajectory of feeling so isolated and so removed from conversation in our day-to-day mechanistic way of going about the world is also in a period of heightened or enhanced and heightened listening, because we're out there listening to all those conversations that other people are having, even in periods of time when we're removed from them. And so it's very much that felt sense of things speeding up because of it. Are we becoming better listeners? Are we becoming more deeply enriched in the complexity of our ideas? And then when we do go out there and have conversations like this again, we're revitalized on another level. And then that's why it feels like the depths of sophistication of understanding the truth community has been evolving so much and becoming like this weird counterculture thing. And it's strange to see what it's emerging as and what it'll become. And the idea of us trying to recharge our batteries in conversations like this versus what happens if conversations like this are weaponized and they're designed to exhaust people who know the truth. And so it's a really interesting thing of where we're at now, where we've been as the alternative media community, where we're at as people, and where we're going. All of us, both as podcasters and as listeners, co-creating that future. It's something that I think about because we're supposed to be like, the revolution isn't televised, but maybe it's on a podcast somewhere. So it's like, what does that become? And it's an interesting thing to be a part of that, both appearing on shows and listening to them.
Yeah, without a doubt. One last thing that I want your opinion on, because it's a couple topics that we've hit on and kind of scratched the surface on, is your opinion on creativity, right, or imagination, or any of these things, right? You hear the theory that some people believe it's external, right? You hear musicians, you hear people talk about like, oh, I I didn't come up with this idea, I was given this idea, right? And what's your opinion on that? Because as somebody who is constantly creative, do you think it is a internal thing that you're tapping into, that maybe it's like life experiences and things you've read and other art that you've taken in and experienced is helping mold, those experiences? Or is it external? Is it this idea of like maybe it's just out there in the universe, in the ether, and you just grab it, or you end up you're this antenna, right, that accidentally, or maybe, but who knows if it's accidental or not, but you end up tapping into this frequency, and then you take those ideas. And this kind of reminds me a little bit, I guess the free will debate is kind of similar, because the free will debate is like, hey, you know is there some external freedom that you have, or is everything just kind of understood as like, okay, this experience and this thing and that thing, is what contributed to me making this decision, and it's not anything greater than that, right? So, I'm kind of just interested in your thoughts on that imagination, creativity, being artistic. Where do you think it comes from?
Yeah, so a lot of people, that's the kind of just the old question of where do you get your ideas from? And you can get into the whole premise of are they things that are sort of just exist in an ethereal realm that waft in and out of our heads, and we lay claim to them because we don't understand the idea that there's a wind of thoughts? Is it something like that? Is it a programming kind of hiccup of our very nature in a digital simulacrum, like digital physics kind of thing? Is it that? Is it basically the storytelling harmonic expression of the narrative side of our existence? If you look at like heart math, if you look at all these different things, beauty aligns certain patterns, so it expresses itself in certain ways. I think that it's like breathing between the microcosm and the macrocosm. You are it, it is you. You are the vessel expressing what it wants you to do. The greatest culmination of its creation is you creating something either more incredible or in alignment with how incredible the creator was. So it's divinity and it's divination, it's a ritual, it's a practice, it's everything. The question is what you, with your free will, choose to do with those palettes of ingredients and make out of it. And that's what sort of the constraints of the realm that we exist in can almost make even more beautiful. It's like, to give you an example and a metaphor, if you look at like the Sistine Chapel, the God and Adam reaching out fingers to one another. God's finger is fully extended, but Adam's is just the tip of the finger is drooping a little bit. It means that literally at any moment, all you have to do to make that divine connection is just raise your finger up and point at it, and then it's there. That's what creativity is. It's making that effort and seeing what comes out of it.
That was beautiful. That's a great way to end this conversation about human existence. Is there so let people know the film again because I don't want people to forget to check it out. Let people know, yeah, do you can please plug away and
Sure.
it let people know where they can get the film. I know it's on YouTube. I believe it's on your YouTube channel, but if not, then correct me. And then also let people know any other upcoming work that you're working on. I know you said you've been doing a lot of research for conspiracy synergy and upcoming projects. So what have you been researching? Like what topics can we look forward to and anything else? Please plug away.
Oh my God. Okay. So I'm going to talk for like 5 minutes now, and it's on a variety of different things, each of which is available for you for free in the value for value model. So first of all, thank you, Ricky, for having me on. It's great to catch up with you. We haven't talked in a while. And the value for value model is the idea that we make a point of going out and doing all of this and researching it and studying it and sharing it with each other in a bigger community in order to eventually create the solutions in times of need for the problems that we are going to face as a species. That's the reality. We know it. We all know it. If you've been paying attention, that's the situation. Anywho, value for value is it's time, talent, and treasure. It's when you basically either throw us a couple of dollars if you want to clip things, if you want to contribute in that way. It helps us immensely. I don't even think you get it. If we get a single dollar in the mail, we're like, fuck yeah. It's like a celebratory thing that we tell our friends about. So the idea of helping podcasts like the Ripple Effect, the Union of the Unwanted, me, which I co-host over on AM Wake Up on Wednesdays, the entire community, that eventually culminates in networks, connections, counter economies, and something that is very real and vibrant in a profound and significant way. So first of all, support content creators. Thank you for listening to the show today. As far as the things that I've been creating and offering in a value for value model, there's first my artwork, which is I'm an artist, writer, director, producer, editor, actor, illustrator, and podcaster. And I put all that up for free on teace.ca. It's teace.ca because I'm in freaking Canada. And that's where I'm stuck right now. So that's the web address for that. A show that I've made in the past few years, which is outreach for your friends and family, is called Conspiracy Synergy. And that's basically turning the world of community and the world and community of conspiracy into a cartoon so that you can share it with your friends and family and get them up to speed about this stuff really quickly, because then they'll want to change their mind and take action and do things differently. And that's really, really important. So that's a tool for you to use to help other people out of the maze that they were born into. It's really important. So conspiracysynergy.com. It's really emotionally palatable. Ricky is one of the best alternative media people on a long list of other wonderful folks, and it's a great way to introduce people to the entire conspiracy community. Check out the references. If you think you already know a lot about conspiracy, go to conspiracysynergy.com, check out the references section, and just start swimming through stuff. And lastly, the movie that I talked about is holdmethemovie.com, and that is my first feature film that I released back in 2016. It's all about hospice, doctor-assisted dying, end-of-life care. It stars Hannah Fierman, who most people know because she was the succubus in the VHS movie when she was flying around like tearing people apart. But she's a really great actress who did a really wonderful job. And I put that up on YouTube for free. Once again, donate whatever you think you want to give as a ticket. It could be $1, it could be 5, could be 10, whatever you think, and then share it with people, because it's a way for us as a community to reach out to normies, show them a movie that isn't too controversial but still well made, and then get them talking about all this stuff because it's going to be relevant for the rest of our lives. So that's a good sense of where you can find me: teace.ca, conspiracysynergy.com, holdmethemovie.com. And thanks again for tuning in and for supporting content creators like Ricky and like everybody in the community, because holy shit, do we need it. And thank you very much.
Thanks, Tease. Yes, please, people, support content creators. I say it all the time in my intros. I'm like, a dollar goes a long way. Most people wouldn't realize that a dollar was even being withdrawn from their account in a monthly basis. And when you think about like just what these podcasts, these documentaries, these content creators, these creators just in general, what the value they've given to us in our lives in regards to just opening our eyes to different worldviews and just sharing, hours and hours of research and thought with us and to help just gain a little bit of understanding of the world. It just you can't even quantify it, So it's $1 goes a long way. I have quite a bit of content creators in the past that I've contributed to, especially Corbett's one that I've contributed for a long time because I felt guilty watching so much of his work and not contributing something. I'm like, he was a guest on my show, and I watched, at one point I was just like so stuck, not stuck, but like just it was like my go-to, corbettreport.com, or when he was on YouTube, just constantly checking his YouTube channel, and just saying, what does he have new? What does he have new? And just consuming every bit of new content he had. So it was it's super fascinating, and it is. It goes a long way. But of course, like you said, and I constantly remind people too, a lot of us are in tough financial times, and maybe we're not the go-getters who are making six digits a year. So you can contribute in many other ways, just sharing, telling people, like you said, uh, uh, posting it on your social media platforms, clipping stuff. I suck at clipping stuff because I hate hearing myself. But it's not just me. Most people do dislike listening to themselves talk. But so yeah, so all that helps. So please help Tease. Check them out on AM Wake Up. I'll put links to your Rumble and Rockfin channel in the show description. That way people can easily check out that morning show. If you're waking up in the morning and you're just looking for something to play in the background while you're doing work or whatever, check it out. They always have amazing guests, amazing conversations, and Tease is a regular on there on Wednesdays, right? So and then you also have Key Lab Tuesday and many other great guests. Ryan was actually the last recording that I've done on this show was with Ryan, another great guest. So Steve does a great job on that show and always gathers some amazing people. So, but yeah, I'll put all that stuff in the show description. We'll make sure that the next Tease and Ricky show doesn't go too long. We'll definitely make it sooner rather than later, and reconnect. And then hopefully, I'd love to also join you guys on AM Wake Up one of these mornings if I can find some free time. Join you
Oh,
guys and bullshit.
Please send an email to Steve or Shelly and they'll have you on like right away. So they'd appreciate the outreach. And like, yeah, they just finished planning the entire concert and got back from it yesterday. So they're kind of just like a hungover party festival mode. They could use someone hanging out and reminding them to recuperate their alternative media persona and shine for the world again. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because I always say, I'm like, I think I would make a better guest than a host, because I'm the type of guest like yourself that, like, okay, give me a question and you can go take a nap. I'll come check in like an hour.
Thanks. You want to say that about you, but okay. I thought I was supposed to do that when I was the guest. All right.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
you are, but that's my point. Like, I look forward to having guests where I don't have to pry things out of them.
Yeah.
Right? You know what I mean? Because it's like, if you ever try, and that's not even just for podcasting. I think just in general, if you're hanging out with people where it's like, you're trying to spark a conversation, you're like, wow, this person just they
Yeah.
can't get anything out of them. Like, don't they find anything fascinating? Aren't they intrigued? Aren't they passionate about anything? You're trying to get something out of them, and some people struggle. So I think, as when you're doing podcasts, it's awesome when you can get those people together who are willing to, who don't just, and I always say, like, there's a difference between enjoying talking and enjoying conversation, right? Like, you enjoy conversation, right? And I think if nobody was listening, that's why we don't do, most of us don't do uh just solo podcasts. I hate talking to myself, right? I mean, your show's different. Conspiracy Synergy is, you're more of a narrator telling a story. But the people who just can talk by themselves for hours, it's like, I don't know, I just always felt weird anytime I've attempted to do it. And it definitely isn't as enjoyable. Like, when I'm talking to somebody, it's enjoyable. When I'm talking by myself, it just doesn't seem as enjoyable, so uh there is a difference between enjoying talking and enjoying conversation. I'll have a lot of people like, oh, you're a talker, you love talking. I'm like, I find myself with age doing less talking, and sometimes if I'm in the right situation, like if I'm, you know, talking to somebody like you and we can kind of riff off each other, then I find like I have that energy to, like, all of a sudden I'm like, oh shit, this is an exciting conversation, and I'm locked in and I'm enjoying it. But then when I'm around, like, a social atmosphere, and I'm just around people who I don't find that interesting, you'll be surprised how little talking I actually do, so it have to be in the right situation.
Yeah, so it's like almost the distinction between the tools and what you use them to do. The idea of some people are just accustomed to blah 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 when they're in a room, but other people will get together and they'll riff and then they'll create like a music out of it. So it's the idea of that echelon of things where it's less habit and it's more let's construct with it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, without a doubt. That's a good way of putting it. Just like most of the things that you say, it's always said well. It's funny because on the Union of the Unwanted, I always get like people always tell me afterwards, like, dude, that Teace guy, every time he talked, it's like he was saying something profound. I'm like, yeah, that's just the way he talks. He like always sounds like you should be listening and writing down, and it's like everything comes out like poetry. It's awesome. So you're a gem, and I'm glad that you're part of the community and people get to listen to you on a regular basis.
Yeah, thanks for having me on again. This is like the third time I think I've been on your show, not including anniversary editions as well as all the Union Unwanted things. So it's been nice hanging out with you over the last 4 years as shit's gotten real and it's gonna happen again, and we need to help people out. So hey, let's all be friends. Thanks for having me on. Support content media creators. Love everybody. Yeah, is there anything else you wanted to touch on before we head out?
That's it. That's it. We'll talk again soon. I'll keep you in the loop for speaking of Union of the Unwanted. We're due for one, so I'll keep you in the loop for that, and hopefully
Okay.
you can make a future one. And
Steve message Steve. Not necessarily right now, but to be a guest on AM. So that's AM Wake Up on Wednesdays. Yeah, he wasn't sure if you were doing Union tonight because he's doing like blunt force with wisdom. So yeah, that works out great. That's awesome.
awesome. Thanks, Tease. Hey, enjoy your time. Really appreciate it. Check out the movie, and we'll talk soon.
Yeah.
See ya.